All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lecture 10. Today we are going to be continuing talking about the Agile project management, and we're going to talk specifically about Scrum today. A lot of these topics are obviously very relevant for your assignment. It will further develop your understanding of Agile and further develop your understanding of things you need to go and actually be presenting and doing for your work. So please make sure you focus very well and ask any question if you're not sure. I would like to thank everybody who's coming, and I would like to just again thank you very much for all your hard work and dedication for this subject. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be talking about the Scrum essentials and about the Scrum day-to-day management of this specific approach. But before I start with any of these things, I would like to go and ask you, what is Scrum? Can any of you tell me what is Scrum, guys? What do you think Scrum is? Anushka?
Yes.
Any idea what Scrum is?
It's like a framework where people just have adaptive communication and iterative process.
Yeah, so it's a framework where there's an iterative process. Iterative process to do what?
They just repeat in a circle.
Yeah, and what are we trying to do?
Achieve a goal, like a sprint.
Okay, so how is Agile linked to Scrum?
Because it's like change derived process. So I think Scrum is like a formation. So when you're actually following that formation, like Agile comes in place when you're constantly looking for change. If there's anything you can improve or any sort of thing like that.
So I'm going to ask this question to everybody. Is Agile and Scrum linked? Is Agile and Scrum, are they linked?
Yeah, I think so.
They are linked. It's basically one specific approach of implementing Agile, which is a Scrum approach of actually how you go and get things delivered in an organization. But yeah, you're definite, it is actually linked. So what I want to do is I want to just start today by presenting a very important video, which really going to go and introduce a lot of the topics I'm going to go and talk about in more details today. It is a bit long, so it's about 10 minutes, but I would like to start with that to kind of form your initial understanding of that concept in depth, and then I'll follow up with all of these materials I would like to go and be covering. So please pay a lot of attention to ensure you have the maximum understanding of this concept of Scrum. Are you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, let's go. Thank you very much.
I think there's no audio.
So, no audio, sir.
Hi, this is me. My name is Hamid Chojai, and I've been involved with a number of software development projects over the years at a number of different companies, and I've come to recognize Scrum as one of the best agile development practices in use today. In this fast-paced video, I want to show you why Scrum is so great and how you can get started with Scrum in under 10 minutes. I'll cover all the core Scrum concepts, like product backlogs, team roles, sprints, burnout charts, and more. So get ready to be bombarded with information. Let's say this is the product we want to build. For this product, we get all kinds of feature requests from customers, executives, or even other team members. In Scrum, features are written from the perspective of the end user. Therefore, features are known as user stories. The collection of all these user stories is called the product backlog. Another way to think of the product backlog is to think of it as a wish list of all the things that would make this product great. Once we have our wish list, or the product backlog, we need to start planning which specific user stories we're going to be putting into a particular release of our product. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's back up a bit. To build this product, we need to have one or more people in our team who are going to play a variety of roles. First, we need her. She plays the role of product owner and helps make sure the right features make it into the product backlog, representing the users and customers of the product. She helps set the direction of the product. Then Meet this guy. He's the Scrum Master, and his job is to make sure the project is progressing smoothly and that every member of the team has the tools they need to get their job done. He sets up meetings, monitors the work being done, and facilitates release planning. He's a lot like a project manager, but that's such a boring title, so we'll call him a Scrum Master to imply he knows some jujitsu. And the rest of the team has similar roles to other development processes. These guys build the product, while these guys test it to make sure it works right. These guys use it and hopefully pay for it. And these guys, they generally get in the way, but it turns out you can't build many products without them. But let's get back to this, release planning. To plan a release, the team starts with this, the product backlog, and they identify the user stories they want to put into this release. These user stories then become part of the release backlog. The team then prioritizes the user stories and estimates the amount of work involved for each item. Sometimes larger user stories are broken down into smaller, more manageable chunks. The collection of all the estimates provides a rough idea of the total amount of work involved to complete the entire release. A quick side note about estimates. There are a lot of techniques for creating good estimates. Some prefer estimating in story points, where estimates are made relative to building a small component with a known level of difficulty. Unfortunately, story points don't answer the question of, when will my project ship? I've found that the best technique is to estimate work in hours, but to use some standards in how estimates are done. For example, things that take less than a day to complete will be estimated as 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8 hours. Every item will fall into one of those buckets. There will be no 3-hour estimates, for example. A 3-hour item would fall into the 4-hour bucket. Larger items will be estimated as 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, or 10 days. Again, all estimates in between will fall into the next larger bucket. Extremely large items are similarly estimated in months, 1, 2, 3, or 6 months. But the reality is that such items will need to be broken down substantially before work actually begins. We'll come back to these estimates in just a minute. But for now, let's get back to this, the release backlog. With a prioritized set of user stories and the estimated amount of work at hand, we're now ready to plan out several sprints to get the work done. Sprints are short-duration milestones that allow teams to tackle a manageable chunk of the project and get it to a ship-ready state. Sprints generally range from a couple of days to as much as 30 days in length, depending on their product's release cycles. The shorter the release cycles, the shorter each sprint should be. And you want to have at least 2 to as many as a dozen sprints in a given release. So at this point, we can take our release backlog and split it up into several of these, sprint backlogs. One of the most important things to remember about sprints is that the goal of each sprint is to get a subset of the release backlog to a ship-ready state. So at the end of each sprint, you should have a fully tested product with all the features of the sprint 100% complete. Since sprints are a very short but a realistic representation of part of the product, the late finish of the sprint is a great indicator that the project is not on schedule and something needs to be done. Therefore, it's extremely important to monitor the progress of each sprint with this, a burndown chart. The burndown chart is the #1 reason for Scrum's popularity and one of the best project visibility tools to ensure a project is progressing smoothly. The burndown chart provides a day-by-day measure of the amount of work that remains in a given sprint or release. In this graph, you can see that the amount of work remaining bounces up and down from day to day, but is generally trending towards 0. Because historical information is provided in the burndown chart, it's easy to see if the team is on the right track. Using the burndown chart, the team can quickly calculate this, the slope of the graph, which is also called the burndown velocity. This is the average rate of productivity for each day. For example, a team's rate of productivity might be that on a typical day, they finish approximately 50 hours of work. Knowing that, it's possible to calculate an estimated completion date for the sprint, or even for the entire release based on the amount of work remaining. What's great about the burndown chart is that we can compare our actual velocity and projected completion date to what the team needs to do in order to finish on time. This is perhaps the most useful piece of knowledge that any team member, product owner, or product executive can have about the project. Because knowing whether or not the project is on track early in the schedule can help teams make the proper adjustments necessary to get the project on track. The burndown chart provides empirical proof that the project is on track or if it's going to be late. So let's talk a little about where the data for this incredibly useful burndown chart comes from. As you recall, part of the release planning process was to create an estimate for each user story in the release backlog. The collection of these estimates for a given sprint represents the total amount of work that must be done to complete that sprint. As each team member goes through and makes progress on one or more of the user stories, they simply update the amount of time remaining for each of their own items. So the total amount of time remaining on the group of user stories that make up a sprint changes on a day-by-day basis, hopefully going downward until it hits 0 when the sprint is complete. The burndown chart aggregates the remaining work data and shows it visually. It's brilliant because it communicates a massive amount of information in just a few seconds. And that brings us to this, the daily scrum. The daily scrum is an essential tool to having communication flow freely between team members. The idea is to have fast-paced, stand-up meetings where team members quickly list the work they have completed since the last meeting and any obstacles in their way. By meeting daily, it ensures the team is always in sync and any major issues are dealt with as soon as they are known. Finally, as each sprint comes to a finish, it's important to have a sprint retrospective meeting where the team can reflect on what went right and areas of improvement. After all, Scrum is a flexible, agile development method that needs constant improving and tweaking for every team. So there you have it, Scrum in under 10 minutes. You now know all the essential concepts to start implementing Scrum inside of your organization. But wait a second, what about tools to help you implement Scrum? Well, it just so happens that I've spent the last 10 years building such a tool, with a lot of help from these guys, a group of genius coders and design ninjas. The tool is called On Time, and it helps you manage your products, your backlogs, your team, your releases, and your sprints. It gives you project visibility with burndown charts and always answers the question of who is working on what. You can get started with it for free at Axosoft.com. Of course, you could use a giant whiteboard, some note cards, and a bunch of different spreadsheets to track everything. You could also use an abacus instead of a calculator to do math, but we're getting a little off topic. So let's quickly review everything. In Scrum, you work with this, a product backlog, which is nothing more than a list of features that we call user stories. You then break down the product backlog into one or more release backlogs. And for a given release, you further break up the release backlog into a number of sprint backlogs, which are essentially short duration milestones throughout your project. You then monitor the progress of each sprint using these, burndown charts, and have daily Scrum meetings to ensure everything is on track. After each sprint, you have a retrospective meeting to fine-tune everything. And if you want a tool to implement Scrum, you can use On Time. It will help you ship software on time. That's all there is to it. Oh, and one last thing. Whether you loved or hated this video, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter or via email if you have any feedback. Now, get going, create a great team, collaborate, and ship software on time.
All right, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've had a look at this very quickly, this video. Any of these things you guys are doing in your assignment? What are we doing? What have you already done?
Product backlog.
You created the product backlog. That's correct. Did you create it? You created obviously on pen and a paper first. You just wrote it down. You wrote what? What did you write?
User stories.
The user stories. So you wrote all of these user stories, which are basically basically form the product backlog. Where did you move the product backlog to?
Trello.
Trello. So what is that Trello? What does it represent from what we have actually seen in this video? What is Trello?
Tools.
Yeah, what tool? What is it called? I can give you a hint. This tool is mentioned at least twice in the picture that is in front of you now. What tool is it? What is it called?
Is it Kanban or?
Kanban. You're creating a visual representation of what is actually presented. So all of these user stories are going visually to be basically presented, and you guys are using that system called Trello. You can use Axosoft, which is that company, what they do. You can use just simply a board that is empty on your wall, like the 2 sheets that I've mentioned for you last week. So there's all of these various ways for you to go and create the same type of information. This summary of that video is really what I'm going to be covering in more details today in the lecture. But this is exactly what you guys need to go and be doing for your assignment. So I'm going to start. Scrum is really a framework within which people can address complex problems. So we're trying to solve something that is actually complex. We're trying to go and be creative. We try to really develop the maximum value to our clients using this Scrum framework. It's very, very easy to understand. It is right. It is about, your colleague earlier said it's about all of these, circle. It's all of these iteration. That's totally correct. It is about all of these iteration. It is lightweight. In other words, it doesn't require all of these tools to be able to go and get the job to be delivered. But it is very difficult for us to go and master. You can't just simply go and change the mentality of people who've been working years on project management to go and suddenly decide to go and start implementing things in a totally different way. So what we need to do is we need to think about how do we try to go and develop all of these agile, adaptive approaches to go and solve problems and delivering the maximum possible value to our clients. So when I talk about Scrum, Scrum prefers to learn as we go. You start things, you make a mistake in the first iteration, you learn from it, you'll make the improvement, and you keep going all the way throughout the actual project. It is much better than command and control. You go and do this. It is not about command and control. It is not about having a manager ordering people what to do. Scrum is all about planning for change is what is preferred over planning for what is expected. So we don't want to go and create all of these requirements at the beginning of the whole project and things don't change. Rather, we want things to keep on changing all the time, because by changing, we are going to be meeting the client's requirements. Scrum wants you to embrace a change, rather try to enforce a plan. We don't want to create a plan at the beginning and we have to follow it dot by dot of how it's done. We want to go and embrace and allow change to go and happen at any point of time. Scrum is about let me go and let me go and actually use what we have developed. And after I use what I have developed, I have to go and inspect it. Is it working well? Is it not working well? Is there any things that we can go and make an improvement? And from that learning, we're going to go and actually adapt. This is different from the traditional approach where we talk about we want to go and have a change control. Any change needs to go and be planned. We need to have a change management process and the whole lot that goes along with that approach. So we need to go and try to use, inspect, and adapt, which is really the most preferred approach in terms of Scrum. When I talk about the Scrum framework, we talk about these three main things. We talk about roles, we talk about ceremonies, we talk about artifacts. So if I was to go and ask you about potentially, how similar Scrum would be to, let's say, the traditional approach, well, we need to compare it to things. Are the roles different? Are the ceremonies different? Are the artifacts different? What is actually different? We talk in Scrum about many roles, product owner, Scrum master, and the actual team. We talk about many ceremonies, sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and we talk about that if you want the daily Scrum meeting. Now we're going to talk about that in a second, but that's basically how we do things. We talk about the artifacts, things you can actually go and potentially see. What can you see? Well, I can see the product backlog, I can see the sprint backlog, and I can also go and see the burn down charts, which you guys have seen in the video, which talks about how we are actually progressing in terms of getting the jobs to go and be completed. So we talk about the roles. I have the product owner, possibly the product manager, or the sponsor of my project. And their job is very simple. You see all of these user stories, they've been basically written. They decide which features we need to go and have for this project. So that's the product owner decide on these things. The product owner speak to the business. The product owner understand what the business wants. And the product owner decides on which features are going to go into the product backlog. The product owner also is going to go and decide when are things going to be delivered. The product owner is going to decide from this 100 user stories, which signify 100 features we would like to go and deliver, they're going to need to go and prioritize which ones we need to go and deliver first and which one we need to deliver later. They're going to have to decide how much money is actually available for us to go and deliver that specific project. All of these are the jobs of the product owner. Then we go and talk about the Scrum Master. This is a person who in the traditional project management, we call him a project manager. Now he's a project manager or a team leader, and he is basically responsible for enacting the Scrum values and practices. Now, enacting the Scrum values and practices is not about let me direct people what to do. It's more about let me go and guide people on resolving their problems to get the job done the way it should be done. We talk about all of these impediments, anything that could inhibit my ability to go and deliver the project. Things such as politics. They are what we call impediments. They keep everybody productive. If anybody is not working according to plan, if there's any problem, if there's any issue, there's what we call the daily Scrum meeting. And that daily Scrum meeting enables the Scrum Master to go and get everybody to go and work productively at any point of time. Then there is, under that Scrum Master, a project team or a Scrum team. 5 to 10 members. Why? Because if you're going to make the team very, very big, it's just going to go and have a very big impact on how efficient we are actually operating. Teams are self-organizing. In other words, teams do not get told what to do by the Scrum Master. It's in contrast, it is about the team who decide how things needs to go and get done. The team is cross-functional. And if you remember from last week, we said about having people that could get everything done by themselves. Like you don't want, actually in 2 weeks ago, we spoke about that. We spoke about you need to have cross-functional teams that you know are self-sufficient. The whole team is able to go and deliver the work that needs to go and be delivered. They have quality assurers. In other words, we call them testers. They have programmers. They have UI designers, which is called user interface designers. They have to go and look, this system, how is it going to go and actually look? Membership should change only between sprints. In other words, when we go, this sprint is for 4 weeks, and we say we are going to go and deliver that sprint, not in the middle of the sprint, you go and say, all right, let me take one person out and let me go and replace them and put another person. That's really not the best approach for us to actually go and do that. We talk about the ceremonies. There's a sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and release planning, which is optional. This is towards the end. But all of these are things that we basically, they create things such as regularity. We know at a regular point of time what's going to happen. They minimize the need for any extra meetings because we know these are the standard meetings you go and do. There are time blocks, which is there's a start time and end time. Daily Scrum is 15 minutes. Sprint planning might be 1 day. A sprint retrospective might be, half a day. It's very specific times. Designed to enable transparency and inspection. Daily Scrum, it's transparent. It's inspection. What have you done? What are you going to do now? What are the actual inhibitors? So we are inspecting that everything is progressing okay and inspecting if there's any issue to be able to go and specifically deal with that specific issue. So there's all of these ceremonies and meetings we need to go and bear in mind, and we'll talk about them in more detail shortly. There's all of these artifacts. You guys are creating a product backlog, then you're creating a sprint backlog, and then you're creating a shipping, release planning, something that is shippable to the actual client. These are the various stages we go and actually try to go and deliver. Now, we start by talking about the roles. You see, this is here how people work. But I assume now, because we are having all of this coronavirus, they're just not going to spend 1.5 meters close to each other. They're going to be a bit more distant. But the bottom line is there's a team, and the team needs to be happy, working together, need to be collaborating, need to be engaging. And this is really what is being signified into this specific image. People talking together very well. Now, one thing I actually like about this picture is I like the extensive involvement of women into that specific team, because in an IT environment, specifically in project teams, I usually found women, potentially doing project management sometimes, but it is very rare to go and actually find women who are working and doing testing or development. Although I believe there need to be more. So I actually love this picture because it actually shows the way that information technology projects need to go and be delivered, the whole collaboration and the value add that both men and women together could add into that specific perspective. We have the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring that the Scrum is understood and enacted. Everybody needs to understand what is the approach for us to go and do things. I need to be a coach as a Scrum Master. I need to coach you. You don't know how to do something, that's fine. It is my job to be your coach. It's my job to go and support you. It's my job to ensure that you guys as a team are adhering with the practices and the rules and the approaches we are expected to go and follow. So as a master, I am a Scrum Master who is also a member of the team. I engage with the team regularly. I speak to them. I understand what's wrong. I know about the issue. I help them to go and solve the problem. So I work daily with the Scrum team. My job is a servant leader. Now you can tell me, what is a servant leader? Servant leader is one more contemporary approach to leadership. That is one, in my opinion, of the most important leadership approaches that is available. You're going to need to serve everybody. Don't think you know everything. Don't think you need to know everything. Just think about, what can I do to go and serve people around me? Okay. So something like that would be ideal for us to go and think about. Think about all of these values, enacting, the values. We want to ensure that people are going to feel accountable. Okay. It's very important to ensure that basically people are doing the right thing at any point of time to get the job done. It's all about also ensuring there's what we call a change agent. Things will not go and all the time work according to plan. We want to go and change. Okay, how do we actually change? Well, you want to go and be a change agent. You want to go and you want to go and actually support people to actually go and embrace change. If you're going to go and find something that is not working according to plan, now your job is, how am I going to go and actually ensure that everybody is embracing that change? How am I going to go and actually guide people to go and tell me whether things are going well or not? And if they're not going well, basically they go and say, well, it's not going well. Let's go and actually try to change and do something in a better approach. That's my role as a Scrum Master. Now you're going to think about the product owner, the single ringable neck. This guy is responsible for the project and driving the success. Okay, the single person in charge of telling me what we need. It's like the link to the stakeholders. The stakeholders tell you what does the business need. The product owner listen to them and put all of this information where it needs to be. He represent and speak to the business. He basically tell me the business want this. I'm going to speak for them and tell you what we need to go and deliver. He understand the vision of what they want, and he basically create that vision in a form that is basically going to be understood by people who are going to go and deliver that vision. The member of the Scrum team, obviously the product owner needs to engage with the Scrum team all the time. So he must be a member of the Scrum team, works daily with the team, clarify requirements. If somebody comes and say, okay, look, I'm the developer, but I don't understand what you mean by this specific requirement. Could you please explain it to me in more details? The product owner is responsible to understand what is the business really asking. And based on that understanding, you'll basically go and make that phone call and basically discuss with them and tell them to the Scrum team what they need to go and be delivering at any point of time. The product owner needs to basically create the vision. What are we trying to go and do? Not simply create the vision and communicate the vision to the right people who are going to be needing to go and do what we want them to go and do. We need to decide what the project and product does and does not include. That's basically the features. So does and does not include. What is in and what is out? So if you want something in, it's going to go in terms of the user story. If you want something out, well, guess what? It's not going to actually be included in the user story at any point of time. It is about ensuring we're going to go and only incorporate in what is basically is required at any point of time. Now, another thing to actually bear in mind is he is the bridge. He's a bridge between the customer, stakeholder, and the Scrum team. He's basically holding everything together. So knows the vision, understand the vision, link the vision, and bring the whole information through to the right people to go and actually get it implemented. Now we talk about the product owner. What is the product owner responsible? You know, he's actually developing a product vision, okay, and strategy and direction. He's setting up all of these short-term and long-term goals for the product. He's taking responsibility for the budget, for the profitability, how much, you know, how well we're going, and so on. He's providing or has access to the product expertise. What product do we need? He decides on the release date for completed items. We're going to release every month, every 6 weeks, and so on. He decides on the functionality, okay? When I talk about the functionality, it basically, everything that is really produced and shown in that backlog, he basically owns the backlog and he enters that functionality. He gathers, prioritizes, and manages all of these product requirements. He works with the actual team on a daily basis to answer questions and make decisions. He conveys the product needs for the team. And he accepts or rejects completed work during the sprint. If something does not actually go and work according to actually plan, he basically, you know, he'll go and tell them, guys, you did not actually, you know, did me what I actually requested to go and do. And he basically goes and tell them about it so that they can actually go and make an adjustment to actually go and deliver it in the next specific point. So you go, there's all of these product, there's a backlog which have all of these user story. He worked with the team, he collaborated with the team, but you notice his job is basically more about, you know, product requirement, the backlog, and the work with the team. 3 main aspects he would need to go and work on to go and get the job done. My friends, anybody have any questions at this point of time? Everything clear, or anybody have any questions? Sultana, thank you very much, Noreen, for the thumbs up. So all good. Thank you, Regina. Are we all good? Deepa, yep. All right, perfect. All right, now let's continue. There's a Scrum team key feature. Scrum team. Traditional Scrum team. Traditional team is more about team tasks and work is being directed by the manager. The manager tells me, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. You know, do you want that in Agile? Do you want that in Scrum? Well, the answer is no, you don't actually want that. You want something that is totally different. You're going to want something that is more self-organizing. You want the team to be able to go and get the job done the way it needs to be done. So you choose how to best accomplish the work. If I am a team, if I have all of these, you know, requirements and needs, and if I know what basically is needed at any point of time, it is my job to go and actually organize how things needs to go and get done. I go and decide that, you know, who's going to be doing what, what's the best solution, how is the best solution. It is all really part of that team to go and actually make the self-organizing. You're not directed by the actual manager. You're not directed by the Scrum Master. It is basically something totally different. It's your own approach. Now, this is really obviously different than the command and control that we've mentioned a few weeks ago. We've mentioned it is not about command and control. It is not about being a manager. If all what you actually go and do and all what you're good at is to go and say, I want to go and tell you what to do, that is not going to work. Okay, Agile and Scrum won't going to work. You need to be ready to let go and tell people, I trust you. And I want you to go and do things yourself because I trust in your ability to do the right thing. Now, before I continue talking about the Scrum team, in a traditional, you know, by the way, this content here I'm covering now would be awesome if I was to ask you to go and make a comparison between traditional and Scrum or traditional and Agile. What can you talk about? Well, these are things you can go and talk about. Traditional teams are formed by function. So the analyst team work by themselves, the QA team work by themselves, the operation team by themselves, the development team by themselves. In a Scrum, it is cross-functional. So if you go and think about this picture on the right, well, you're having a development team, you're having an analysis team, you're having an operations team, and you're having a QA people, all part of one team. The same apply. You have cross-functional team 1, cross-functional team 2, and cross-functional team 3. They're all part of that specific team. So cross-functional teams have all the competencies needed to complete the work without depending on anyone else who is not actually part of that specific team. Now, we spoke about the product backlog. You guys are doing your backlog. You add an item to the backlog, you delete an item from the backlog. Simply what it is, the backlog is a list of all the work that we need to go and do in the project. Now, mainly we're talking about all of these user stories, but remember, there might be more work required than user stories in the actual project. And that's something to also go and bear in mind. But if we're talking simply about the actual features, backlog is basically the list of all the work or all the features to be completed for the project. The product owner is responsible for the backlog, including what's in it, what's available, what do we need to do, what do we need to do first, what do we need to do after. It's all of these a priority about what we need to go and actually work on. A product backlog is never complete. It evolves along with the product and the environment in which it will be used. As you are moving along, you go and find that you've developed something and that it could be improved. You know, you continue having work to go and be done on a backlog. While you're going, it's 3 months down the track, there's been a brand new features introduced to the market. And because of that brand new features, you basically thought that, you know, something could actually go and happen. You thought that there's a big problem that, you know, we're going to have if we're not going to go and incorporate a brand new feature. So what do you do there? Well, you go and you start adding to the actual backlog. If you find that the feature is in the backlog and that feature, well, it is no longer suitable or it is no longer adding any value because of something that has changed in the market, then what happened there, guys, is you go and say, you know what, something needs to go and be deleted from my whole backlog. So it's about really thinking about the backlog. It's about a list that keeps on changing as we progress in the actual project based on what is needed or what is considered to be needed at any point of time in relation in terms of adding value to my clients. Now, we talk about all of these backlog. You know, there's large size, few details, or there's small size with details. You know, the priority is typically going to be on small size, lots of details. Why? If you're going to come to a development team and say, I would like you to go and deliver something to me, and you give them something that is really big, because it's really big, and because sprints are not supposed to last, you know, for very long period of time, like they're supposed to actually last between maybe between 2 weeks and 6 weeks. That's an ideal. Because of that, if you come and actually give the product team a very large user story, they're going to say, well, that's very large. We're not really confident with what you just given us here. We're not sure we can go and actually deliver this for you. So what we want to do is we want you to go and work on that feature, make it into smaller pieces feature, and then we're happy to go and start working on that feature for you. So the large size is not something that they usually go and actually like. Also, the large size, you know, you might have a small size user story which have not much details. Also, they're not going to work on that. So what they want you to do is they want you to give them things that are potentially not very big size user stories, and things that have enough details for you to be able to go and be able to understand what you need to go and do. If I come and tell you, I want you to go and do this, you're going to say, what is this? Say, this. Don't you understand? It's this. Well, no, we don't understand. You're just not giving us any more details. It's different than I tell you, I want you to go and deliver for me this assignment. I want you to do it by 9 a.m. I want you to go and ensure that it's 2,000 words. I want you to make sure that it's specifically referenced. I'm giving you very, very specific details. And that's really what you need to go and give your clients. The clients in this instance is the clients of the product owner. It is the Scrum team. You need to tell the Scrum team clearly what we want you to go and deliver. Without providing that information, without having that clarity, nothing is going to be able to go and get delivered. And that's something really important for us to go and bear in mind. So these small things, small items, if you want, are things we are able to go and work on at any point of time. We talk about higher ordered product backlog, clearer and more details, and lower ordered ones need to be of the size and clarity so that the actual team can consume them in one sprint. If the sprint is for 4 weeks, and if you give me a user story and that user story is going to be requiring 6 weeks of work, I will tell you very simply, I am not actually going to go and work through it. We're going to go and have to work on something that is really smaller. If you go and think here about hotel software system, there's a product backlog. Now, the product backlog item is organized by complexity. Allow a guest to reserve a room. What is that? That's a small size for you to go and do. Allow a guest to cancel a reservation. What's that? That is extra small. Allow a guest to change a date of a reservation. What's that? That's medium. Allow a hotel manager to run a revenue report. What's that? That's medium. Improve exception handling. What's that? That's large. So you go and see, when you go and talk about the user story, you talk about the organization per complexity. You talk about organization per size. You know, if I talk about complexity, for example, that complexity will tell me how long am I going to be needing for me to go and deliver any specific project. So if, for example, I'm having a user story that is small, that means it is not going to actually take me a lot of time for me to go and deliver. If I talk about one that is extra small, obviously it's going to take me less time for me to go and deliver. Medium, it's going to take more time. Large, it's going to take more time. So it is about organizing all of these user stories by complexity, because based on this complexity, you'll be able to understand roughly how long time do you go and need to be able to go and finish this work. It really aligns with what we've explained in the video, which they tell you, well, the user stories, you try to basically organize them per days, per hours. You make estimations to be able to know about how big they are so that you're going to go and actually work on them in practice. We talk about the sprint. Let's run. Let's get the job done. Let's actually focus on what basically we need to do at any point of time. So the basics of sprint: consistent iterations of time box where the team completes a specific group of tasks from start to finish. You're not going to give me something that is not complete. I'm going to work on something from the beginning till the end, something that is really ready to go and be completed and go and be delivered. So the iteration is time box. We talk about the time box. What's a time box? Well, time box could be, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. But, it is very rare for you to actually find that an iteration is going to be more than 6 weeks. The regular time is usually 4 weeks. Now, it really obviously depends on how often do you go and release things to the actual client. If, for example, do you release things to the client every 4 weeks, your sprint might only be 1 week. If you release things to the client every, let's say, 12 weeks, then your sprint might be 4 weeks. So it depends on how, what do you release? How often do you go and release things to your client? We talk about the time box duration is consistent from sprint to sprint. You're not going to say, well, this time it took 4 weeks and next time we're going to do it 2 weeks and next time it's going to be 6 weeks. Why? Because you want to create a consistent approach of work. You want people to be able to go and say at any point of time, okay, well, we know we are used on a process. It is every 6 weeks, every 4 weeks, every whatever, you know, it doesn't matter the period. But whatever period you choose, it becomes a period that is actually consistent. And you continue working with that consistency. We become very much used on doing all of this work consistently. It becomes part of our normal practice. Each sprint can be thought of as a project. Why? Because at each sprint, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week, I really don't care what it is. But at each sprint, we are going to give the client something that is ready to go and use. The client could take it and use it immediately. That is what we're trying to go and do. So, like projects, sprint are used to accomplish something. The difference between traditional, and that's another thing if you want to make the comparison, a difference between the traditional and the Scrum project management is in a traditional approach, we go and get something delivered, let's say every 12 months or every 6 months, okay, to get something that is delivered. You're not really checking and getting any work in progress. You're just getting the final product going and released to the client. In a sprint, that's different. In a sprint, let's say the project is for 6 months. Every 4 weeks, I can give you something. Every 4 weeks, I'm giving you something that is working and potentially could be released to the client because I am giving you a ready to publish functionality. It's different than the traditional way of management that basically might take 12 months for us to go and deliver things. Each sprint builds incrementally on the work of the previous sprint. So if in the first, let's say I'm doing a logging system or a accounting system that people would be able to go and use to go and make their financial transactions. In the first sprint, I might go and deliver reporting functionality. And the next sprint, I might go and actually add to that functionality and say people could go and actually then make service requests. And the third one, I would say people could pay bills. And the fourth one, I would say people could go and check all of these specific transactions. You know, every functionality goes and actually change at any point of time. So the sprint builds incrementally on the work of all of these pre-sprints that goes and gets delivered. At the heart of every Scrum is a sprint, because the sprint is really about let's go and work and let's get the job done. So when we talk about the sprint, well, with sprint, we have to plan what we want to go and deliver. Sprint planning, that's the first thing. We plan what needs to go and be done. So if you go and work on your assignment, if you tell me sprint planning, sprint, doing the work, if you show me all of these things, sprint perspective, sprint review, daily Scrum, if you mention these sort of concepts, it'll be very beneficial for your assignment. I see that you think about Scrum and you implement it in practice and you think about all of these various stages that are involved. I don't need to tell you about it. You know about it. And you basically thought about how does it apply to your assignment. So you plan the work to be done. Then second, you have to do the work. Then after you do the work, you have to go and actually make the sprint review. Have we actually go and check what we've delivered? Do you like it? And we have to go and do the sprint retrospective. What have we learned? What have we done well? What have we not done well? How could we improve? And so on. Now, if you look at this picture, it's making it seem as if it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Guys, it is not about 1, 2, 3, 4. Planning the work happens at the beginning. Doing the work happens for a long period. But there's something that happens all the time. Number 3 is called the daily Scrum. This usually happens every single day in your project. It is about coordinating the work. It's about ensuring everything is progressing as expected. It's about ensuring if there's something not working as expected, I'll have to go and ask myself, well, what have I not done well so that I'm going to go and actually fix it when I'm going to go and do the same thing in the future. So you basically go and have the job to go and think about all of these aspects. The daily scrum is really something that we do every single day. It's called daily sprint, and every single day we go and review the work that we're doing. It's called, the scrum meeting or sprint meetings, whatever you would like to call them. Now, during the sprint, you cannot make any change. You cannot go and say, I would like to go and add this feature. You cannot go and say, I want to go and reduce this. You cannot go and say the quality is not good. You cannot say, I want something with less quality. That's it. If I come and I say to you, I am the project team, we have already committed, and what we've committed for is we've already committed for very specific delivery. We've committed for it. We're not going to go and change at any point of time. That's it. It's been already committed. It's been approved. That's what we are going to be working on and proceeding at that specific point of time. So you can't in the middle, the CEO can't come in the middle of the actual time and say, well, could you do this extra things for me? Or could you please reduce this for me? I don't want it anymore. Or let's just change things. They can't do that. It has been agreed from the beginning. That's what you go. That's what we've agreed on. I'm not going to change anything for you at that specific point of time. Scope may be clarified and may be renegotiated as more is learned. If, for example, we go and find out that that we have committed to something and that something is only going to be requiring 2 weeks of work rather than 4 weeks of work, we can go and potentially say, you know what, we want to go and do one extra thing for you because we have found out that what we are requesting from us doesn't actually require all of this time. And because we found that out, we would like to go and give you the option to go and give me one extra user story. Or for example, you might be working on a story that you thought you understand it very well. You started to work and deliver that user story. And as you are delivering, you figure out that something is not clear. You go and speak to the client, and then when they explain it to you, you find out, actually what they asked me to do is actually much more than what I've expected. You go and say, well, you know what, I'm going to not be able to deliver all of this for you. You negotiate. You go say, I'm going to go and deliver a few less of these items because what you're requesting is basically not feasible at that specific point of time. Okay, so we talk about the sprint. We know we need to go and start getting the works to go and actually be completed. So we start the sprint. How do we actually start the sprint? Well, we have the product backlog that you can see, which is the user stories that you guys went and you work on creating. Then from there, you took this chunk here that you can see that is highlighted. You go and took that part and you say, okay, for the first sprint, I am going to work on this part. So you move that part and that becomes part of your first sprint backlog. Then you go and you start working on that specific item, sprint planning, day-to-day doing the work. You have daily scrum meetings. You continue going and getting the job done, completed. At the end of the day, you basically get a potentially shippable product. So it is an increment because as you move along, all the time you basically keep on actually increasing what you're basically delivering to the client. So you go and have an increment. First part, I might deliver one feature, then I might deliver another feature, then I might deliver a third feature. We basically build them one at a time. Now, when starting a sprint, you will need to establish your goals of the sprint. What are we trying to go and actually achieve? Then you choose the user story that support you delivering those specific goals. Then you break all of these user stories into specific tasks because every story, and that's what you guys have created the user story. You've decided why you want this user story. You've decided what are we trying to achieve. So you logically thought about what you're trying to go and deliver in terms of those user stories that you've chosen. Then for every user story, you guys are putting tasks. And you can put to the tasks start dates, end dates. You can assign people to go and do this job. That is basically the same thing you guys are doing in your assignment. So you break the stories into specific tasks because to get this story completed, there are tasks that needs to go and be completed first. And then you go and create a sprint backlog. You know, the backlog is all of these things that we went and if you want, it's delivered, it's ready to go and actually released at any point of time. So I've already finished it. It's ready to go. It's now going in the backlog until we're going to go and be ready to release all of these items that are in sprint backlog. We're going to be ready to go and release it to our clients. We mentioned the sprint artifacts. We mentioned the product backlog. We've mentioned the actual sprint backlog. We also mentioned today earlier in the video, we mentioned the burn down charts. Now the question is, what is a burn down chart? Well, we're going to start by talking about one at a time. The product backlog, this is the backlog that we're working. Again, I'm talking about the requirements, all the desired work, ideally expressed as a list of user stories along with your story points. Now, do you guys know what a story point is? What is a story point? Any idea? Abdul Rahman, any idea? Zaka, Abdul Rahman, anybody could tell me what is a story point? Just trying to see, some people have chatting to me, so let's read. It is a requirement. Well, okay, that user want to perform. Yeah, there's more to that. Anyone could tell me what is a story point? Okay, let me ask you a question. If I tell you, I want you to do me an assignment that is 1,000 words, how many hours do you reckon you need to go and complete that work? 1,000 words assignment, 1,000 words report. How long do you reckon you need for that? Regina?
Depends on the topic.
Okay, let's say we're going to go and I want you to go and simply create a topic about comparing Agile to project management body of knowledge or the traditional project management. 1,000
1
words.
to 2 hours.
1 to 3 hours. Okay, let's say 3 hours. If I go and tell you I want the same assignment, but I want to go and I want it to be 2,000 words, how long do you need? Do you need double the time? Yes or no?
Maybe not double, but maybe extra hour,
Extra hours,
maybe
okay.
1 2 extra hours.
So what I want you to think about it, it is basically, I'm increasing your size. The size increasing from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 words. We basically keeps on increasing the size of what we're trying to go and deliver. The same thing is basically what we go and do when we talk about the product backlog. We have what we call this story points. Story points is an estimation of how much work is required to go and complete a task. If let's say a user story is very small and very basic work, you might give it a 2 story points. If you talk about a story that is a bit bigger and harder to go and achieve, you might give it 4 story points or 6 story points. If you talk about a larger item to go and deliver, you might give it, for example, 10 or 12 story points. So the story points is basically help you go and actually understand how much work is actually involved into you going and delivering at that specific task that you need to go and deliver. So the book will give you all of these lists of the requirements that you would like to go and deliver, expressed as a list of user stories along with the story points, such as the item has value to users or customers of the product, prioritized by the product owner. They decide what basic needs to go and actually be first, what needs to go and be under. Reprioritize at the start of each sprint. So before we start working on something else, let's say they give me 4 user stories and they say, please, I want you to work on these user stories for the month of January. I might go and start working as normal on that user story. as the sprint is in progress during that month, what happens is stories gets added, stories gets removed. The priority of some story goes up, the priority of some stories go down. So what happened at that specific point of time is the items on the actual backlog will go and change. The prioritization of what's in the backlog will change. If there's a more important user story that comes and becomes a key requirement that we really need people to go and work on this very short period of time, then what's going to happen is we're going to need to go and put that in the priority as part of our product backlog. Every sprint, we keep on changing. When we get to the beginning, before the sprint, when we finish that first sprint, and before the team starts on the next sprint, they look at the backlog and say, all right, let's look at the priority. Let's look at what's in the backlog. And based on that, they will make their choice on what item they would like to go and choose to go and work on at that specific point of time. So the sprint backlog is individuals sign up for work of their own choosing. Work is never actually assigned in a sprint. Estimated work remaining is updated daily. And who updates it? You are updating it as a person who's supposed to go and do the job. A team member can add tasks, delete tasks, make changes in the backlog. Work for the sprint emerges as we basically start doing the tasks that are related to each backlog. If work is unclear, we basically go and we speak to the actual, product owner. We might go and make some renegotiation. We might say, well, you asked me for too much than what I can actually go and deliver. So what we do, if the work is unclear, we define the backlog item with a large amount of time and break it down later into smaller chunks of work. We update work remaining as basically more becomes known. We start doing more work and doing more work. So if you, for example, estimate that the story needs 6 hours and you have put 3 tasks, but then suddenly you figure out that there's an extra task that is required that is going to take an extra 2 hours, you'll update that specific sprint backlog item and you keep on working on it until basically it gets completed and it gets ready to put and to be released to the clients. Sprint backlog tasks. Well, one, people are motivated to get to the finish line. If you have a task that you can complete quickly, you are more likely to go and actually finish on time. So we want to go and give people tasks that they can actually complete on time. We want to give them things that are not very, very chunky and very big, that they basically feel they cannot do it. There's this motivation theory which says, if I go and tell you, like if I go and say now to you guys, I'm going to ask you this very simple question. If I go and tell you, guys, I know you're going to work very hard and I know you're trying your best, but what I want to tell you is very simple. It does not matter how hard you work. It does not matter what you do. Whatever you do, you are not going to pass ICT712. How are you going to feel?
Oh, very sad.
Very sad. Okay.
It's not
is it, go on, Sajata. Is it only you're going to be sad?
No, it's not possible. After doing hard work and putting effort and understanding it, we're going to make it.
Let me tell you an example that happened to me. I am studying a course at uni at the moment. It's a migration agent course. So I become a migration agent. And I went and I actually asked the teacher a question. And I said, I said, this course is very hard. You work so much. It takes like 20 hours a week to study per subject. And I said, there's something wrong. I said, this is even harder than the PhD that I've done myself. I said, this doesn't make any sense. And her response to me was, don't be very hard on yourself. If you get a pass on the assignment, that's an awesome achievement. So how do you think I felt when she told me, if you get a 50 on the assignment, it's a great achievement? How do you think I felt?
Very relieved.
Very relieved? Really? Yeah. I felt very unmotivated. Like if I go and tell you, guys, whatever you're going to do, you're going to maximum get a 50 on your assignment. Are you going to be motivated to study hard? You can say, what's the point? I study very hard and I get a 50. Does that make sense?
We won't study hard in that case.
You won't study hard. You were saying, what?
If topper, yes.
Eh?
Because anyhow, we are going to get 50.
Yeah, what's the point? Sujata, what did he say?
Yeah. anyhow, if you study hard also same.
Yeah, exactly. Sujata, you also said something. What did he say, Sujata?
I said that's for genius topper.
Genius, like for God's sake, it's not a genius. It's just, it's, in my opinion, it'll be very bad organized. If I come and tell you guys, whatever you're going to do, you're going to get a 50, then I am a very bad teacher. Do you know why? Because I've designed my course in a way that you guys will only get a 50. I'm setting you up for failure. That means I am a bad at basically doing a specific outcome. So this is what we call the effort to outcome. If you believe whatever effort you're going to do, you're not going to get the outcome, you're not going to become motivated to do any job. Correct? If there's effort and no outcome, why would you going to go and actually work hard? The same thing for people who work on the sprint. You want to give them something that they can finish. You want to give them something that they know they can finish. If you give them something and say, well, I know you need to do it in 4 weeks, but whatever you do, you're not going to finish it in 2 weeks. Then you're going to say, well, if you know I'm not going to finish it, why are you even giving it to me? It makes no sense. I won't be able to go and get the job. Where is my motivation? Okay? So you need to basically be very careful. Task in Agile project should take a day or less for us to go and complete for one of two reasons. Why? Because you want people to be motivated to do the job. And two, one-day task can provide early red flags that the project might be veering off course. If you know that things are not going on track, then you know that you are going to actually get one specific potential backlog items to be delivered late. And if they are going to be delivered late, it will actually mean you won't be able to deliver to the client the outcomes that they are expecting. Does that make sense? Beautiful people, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, matey. Thank you, Noreen, for your thumbs up. Zakka, Anuska, perfect. Saida, thank you very much, guys. So, guys, a burn down chart. Does anybody remember what we said the burn down chart is at the beginning today of the video? Do you remember what that is? Can anybody try to explain the burn down chart and why it's important? We've played the video earlier. Do you remember?
It says it gives you the estimation how many days your project takes. It basically giving the velocity, showing the velocity, and it helps the Scrum Master to detect how many days it will your project gets to be done.
Okay, so let's say I give you this example. If let's say I say the project needs 100 hours to complete, yeah, and you go and run a burn down chart, and you see the burn down chart tells you we already finished 40 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how long does the project still need to be completed?
We have already done
40 hours.
40 hours, and there will be more 60 hours left to be done.
60 hours. So if you know you're doing 10 hours per day, how many more days do you still need?
6.
6 days, 100%. Why? Because there's 60 hours left.
Yeah.
That is exactly the same concept how the burnout chart works. The burnout chart looks, okay, how many hours are we completing a day? Oh, we're completing on average 40 hours a day. Perfect. How many hours is left for my project? 400 hours still left of work to be completed. No worries. That means we are going to be finishing the project in another 10 days. And that's really a very, very important concept to be able to go and monitor and track what is happening. So a burn down chart, it really displays of what work has been completed and what is really left to complete. One for each developer or for each work item. It gets updated every single day, because every single day, if there's more tasks required to go and be completed, then what happens is you're going to go and you have to actually go and add all of these extra items. If you know there's more work, if you go and add, let's say, an extra 10 hours, that extra 10 hours that you've added will be added to the estimated number of hours remaining to go and be completed. If, for example, you still have 400 hours to complete and on average you complete 40 hours, then you know your project is going to be roughly completed in another 10 days. Make your best guess about the hours and points completed each day. That is really what the actual developers or testers or whoever is required to do a task, that is what they actually estimate and at any specific point of time. They go and look at the release burn down chart, shows overall progress, and then it is actually updated at the end of each sprint to go and see how variable are we in terms of the amount of hours and the work that we are completing at any point of time. You look at this chart. The first one is, well, you can see we needed 50 hours and we still need 50 hours in day 31, which means we haven't done any work on that project. Second graph, we needed 48 hours. Second day, we didn't do anything. Third day, we become 47 hours, which means we've only done 1 hour. Then for 4 days, we've done nothing. You see how the progress is very, very slow. We're not actually working quickly to get the job done. Then you look at the last one, work being performed in the last one. So you can see, okay, we were 50 or 49. Suddenly we became 40. Then we went and it started decreasing, suddenly from 35, we went very quickly to become 15. That's very, very quick you're moving, which means if you're moving that quickly, it tends to mean you're actually taking shortcuts and you're not actually delivering all the things that you really need to go and actually deliver at any point of time. So there might be a problem here that you need to go and actually consider whether you're doing things the way you should be doing or whether you're not. I love this. This is a daily Scrum meeting. This is one of the most powerful tools when it comes to delivering Scrum and very successful projects. The way that it works is very simple. You go and get your team, which is formed of 4 to 10 people. You make those people stand in a circle, and you ask those people 3 simple questions. You ask them, what did you do yesterday? What will you do today? Is there anything that is stopping you from achieving your goals? 3 very important questions. The daily meeting runs for about 15 minutes. The daily meeting is where everybody needs to be standing during the meeting. You can say, why do they need to be standing? Because they need to feel the urgency of ensuring they go and get the job done. If anybody arrived to the meeting late, they usually get asked to put a gold coin donation that goes for a charity. Everybody had a very specific point of time. Everybody cannot deviate from these 3 points here. If they find someone who is actually deviating, you notice the actual Scrum Master straight away says, sorry, my friend, this is a very important topic, but you are now going beyond what we are basically expected to go and do at any point of time. You say, please, let's just go and actually refocus on the questions. After you record, what did you do yesterday? What will you do today? And is there anything that is in your way? What you do is you go and you send an update to everybody so that everybody will know at any point of time what they're doing today. You also, if there's anything that is blocking progress, you go and start having meetings with only the required people for you to discuss what is actually stopping the progress and to try to very quickly solve all of these blockages. Why? Because if you don't actually solve those items that are blocking your progress, and if you don't solve them very, very quickly, you are going to be delaying the project. Every hour that you take not to resolve a problem means an extra hour that is going to go and take you in terms of time required to go and finalize your project. So you go and actually look at all of this information. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? Is there anything that is in your way that is stopping your progress? So the sprint can also be known as a daily stand-up meeting or a daily huddle meeting. There's different meetings for it. Meeting must last 15 minutes or less. You cannot be more. Anyone may attend, but only the team and the scrum master may talk. For example, if the CEO comes, he can be there, but he cannot talk. He can only observe. Focus on status of the current work, priorities, and impediments which are stopping my progress. Daily scrum meetings are for coordination. They are not, and I repeat, they are not for us to go and solve our problems. Any problem that we go and uncover and identify at any point of time is a problem for us to go and try to manage at a different time, not to try to manage immediately. It gets managed outside of the actual meeting, not inside the meeting itself. Sprint review. The team presents what they have done during the sprint. We've done that. Have a look at it. Typically takes a form of a demo where they go and actually demonstrate all of these new features. They basically demonstrate it to the client. Look, have a look, sir. Have a look at what we've done. You show them what has been done. It is informal. It is really, if you want a 2-hour prep time rule, it just doesn't actually take a lot of preparation, no slides, nothing at all. Whole team participates. We basically invite the whole world. Okay, come business, have a look. This is what we've done. Tell me whether you are happy with what we've done or whether you are actually not happy with what we've done at that specific point of time. Sprint retrospective. Guys, I told you at the beginning, sprint is about all of these embracing change. We need to continue embracing change at any point of time. We finish working on a sprint. Can anybody tell me how long does a sprint last? How long does a sprint last? I've said it earlier. How long does a sprint last?
Maximum of 1 month.
2 weeks.
Sorry?
2 weeks.
2 weeks or?
1 month.
1 month or 6 weeks. Now, so 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or 2 weeks. How do we decide how long the actual sprint is? Okay, I'll repeat that. I said earlier that it depends of how often do you release features to the client. If you release things, for example, every, let's say, 8 weeks, you might go and say, you know what, I'm going to go and have every sprint that only lasts for 4 weeks. If you go and actually make a release every 4 weeks, you might say, you know what, I want to have my sprint duration to be only 1 week so that we can have 4 things to go and deliver in that specific sprint delivery. But what I want you to bear in mind is it doesn't matter if your sprint is 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks. When you're doing work, you do make mistakes. When you're doing work, you do something great, awesome. You do something not very well. Now, if you do something great, you need to be able to keep on doing it. If you do something poor, you need to say, this is the bad things that I'm doing, and I should actually stop doing that because it is not working as expected. And that's really what happened after you finish your sprint and you show the clients what you've done. You do what is called a sprint retrospectives. Like the daily stand-up meeting or the daily scrum meeting, you ask questions. You ask, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? How do we fix and improve for the next sprint? You see, this is different than the daily stand-up meeting, which asks, what did we do yesterday? What are we doing today? And what are the problems that are stopping your progress? This one here is more about after we finish the sprint, we're going to have to go and improve. What did you do well? What we didn't do very well? how can we go and really improve our performance? By learning that, we'll be able to go and decide what we are going to be doing to be able to fix the problem going forward. How are we going to go and continue being a team that is constantly improving how they operate. So we talk about the sprint retrospective. It's done at the end of every sprint. It is an opportunity for the team to come and inspect and create a plan for improvement to be enacted during the next sprint, because it is all about improvement. How do we get better now, not in 10 years' time? The results should be input stories into the backlog. So if we go and find something we need to go and improve, we can go and make it as a story in the actual backlog so that we can ensure it gets done. We don't forget about it. We incorporate it. All the Scrum team members participate except the product owner, unless someone asks him to go and actually participate. Why? Because the product owner is not in charge or responsible for how the work gets done. All what they are responsible for is telling you what to put in the backlog. All what they're responsible for is telling you what is a priority. All what they're responsible for is clarify what is, what every story is and what the actual customers are actually asking for. Their job is not to tell you how to do your work. That's why they don't usually participate. But if you want them to participate, they usually be very welcome to come and actually join the team and explain their own recommendation about how things could go and be improved. If you talk about the retrospective, for example, the team, you might say, stories will be granular enough when possible to deliver within 1 to 2 days. We will have nightly builds to integration. Any team member can assess in completing any work item. Any blocks should be addressed when they are encountered and mentioned in the stand-up. In stand-up is not already removed. Instant messaging open to teammates during the sprint. Don't be late to meetings. Use a sneaker net, whatever that means for them, whenever possible, and email only when necessary. And don't kill the Scrum Master. He's only there for guiding us. So this is really, a team came and said, well, we have made some mistakes into how we are operating. And based on that, they created all of these rules. And based on that, they wanted to ensure that everybody is going to actually be following all of these rules. You look here. What should we continue to do in training? Well, we should continue to give games, prizes, training manual, good materials, good reinforcement, whatever that is, passion, humor, real world examples, stimuli thinking, more training, confiscate funds if people are not actually focusing, good presentations, knowledge, good mix of people. So you know exactly in this example about training, what is done great, what is bad, time management. Okay, game guidance, or how to actually do things, game guidance, wrap up, what's the next step, how do we actually apply to real life, story workshops, tape for future training. So there's, you notice, the bottom line is, you notice that there are things that are actually being done well, there are things that are actually not being done well, and you go back here to these questions. What did you do well? What didn't we do well? How are we going to improve? If you're not going to get to the stage where how you are improving, the whole thing means nothing. The whole point and the whole purpose of understanding what you've done great is so that you can continue doing it. The whole purpose of knowing what you have not done well is to ensure you are going to go and incorporate the improvement that are necessary to go and get the job done. Now, I recap, ladies and gentlemen, Scrum is popular because it works. It gets a lot of benefit. Don't fall in the trap of thinking that bits can be missed out and it will still yield the results. If you miss the important items, you're not going to get the outcomes. You must have a clear vision and backlog. You must ensure there's only one product owner making decisions about the content and what is important. You don't want conflict. One person knows the vision, one person knows what we're trying to go and do, and one person explains to the team what they need to go and do. Deliver the work with business value in every sprint. Working usable product is the only sign of success. If you haven't delivered something that is ready to be released and given to the client, you have not actually done your job. Develop a working practices, requirements, acceptance criteria, processes, everything as a team with representative of all the different disciplines, because you need them to go and get the job done. Don't put the product development team under too much pressure. Get them to decide what they need to go and actually work at any point of time. Teams that work at a sustainable rate of delivery results than those who are actually continuous stress. They do deliver better if you're not going to put them under all of these various stress. The best way to start is to, well, just start. Let's get the job done. Let's basically initiate the work. And from there, let's go and actually start moving on. Set the bar high so that you can actually continually refine and improve and get the best outcomes to go and be delivered. The Scrum Master helps make things happen, organize the team, develop good practice, and remove impediments. Good metrics help the actual support making informed decisions and provide great reporting if we're doing the right measurement at any point of time. The team is expert at problem solving, so let them get at their job. Do not interfere. Do not think you know better than them. Tell them, we trust in your ability and we want you to go and do the job yourself. Learn lessons and always think ahead. Scrum never sleeps. Scrum requires all of these constant improvements. Learn about the issues, learn what you're not doing great, and continue finding ways for you to go and actually improving. Dear students, that was a summary about the Scrum that I want you to study. This is important for your exam potentially, and this is obviously important for your assessment for you to go and actually apply it in practice. So, do you have any questions, my friends?
Yes, sir. Big question regarding exam.
Tell me.
Sir, are we gonna do it face to face? How can we do that?
You're gonna go to KOI and you're gonna be making the exam face to face in KOI.
Oh.
And if I was to tell you, I think I know when the exam is. They sent a communication. It's in October. It's on the 14th of October. It's on Wednesday, I believe.
12 o'clock, is it, sir?
I think it's 12 o'clock, yeah.
But then it's not mentioned like which class and where we should be going. That's the problem.
They will send you all of those details, so you don't have to worry about that. They'll provide the information for you. The reason why the exam is face-to-face is because it requires you guys to be able to make drawings and network diagrams and things like that. If you want to go and actually apply that information, it will make it very difficult for you to apply it online. Plus, there are requirements from the Computer Society, Australian Computer Society, that certain things need to actually be done face-to-face, especially the application items. So that is really the reason why your exam is face-to-face. But it is done in a COVID safe setting. There's very limited people in the actual rooms, and they've done it in a very, very safe manner.
Sir, I want to ask about the type of our exam will be like. It will be open book or closed book?
It is a closed book exam.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, my friend?
I just received an email from Graham Sutler. He mentioned over there like he's not 100% sure about the on-campus exam. Like
from who received?
The question may be changed after some time.
Who have you? Sorry, who have you emailed?
Graham Sutler.
Yeah, what did he say? Graham, yeah, what did he say?
Graham Sutler.
Yeah, what did you ask him? What was his response about?
I'm not asking about the response, and that was a general email. I think the average student get that email.
Yeah, what's your question? So maybe I can answer it to you.
Okay. Actually, I'm not asking anything. I'm just telling you. He mentioned in the email, like the exam may or may not be on campus. Because this was the sense of the email, like.
Yeah, look, I think what he said,
he mentioned in the email, if the government regulation changed and his affect our ability to run on the campus exam, we will notify all students as soon as possible.
Yeah. So what he's saying there, Zaka.
I'm not sure 100%.
Yeah. Well, what he's saying, is, let's say tomorrow, or let's say in the next 4 weeks, we suddenly have an increase in the COVID cases, and we start having, I don't know, 100 cases, and the government says you need to shut all your businesses down. If that was to happen, we will need to revert back to the actual online system. Does that make sense? So your exam is face to face. Your exam has been scheduled for face to face. What Dr. Salta is saying there, if something was to change and suddenly we become like Melbourne and we need to change, and the government says you cannot operate, then we will have to change. Okay, then what will happen is, which means we will need to make an adjustment to the actual exam that you guys will have to go and do, and that will basically mean we need to then find a way to actually make your exam online. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, totally fine.
Yeah, but at this point of time, at this stage, at this now, your exam has been scheduled to run face to face. Considering how everything is going in New South Wales, I personally anticipate that that things will remain running face to face for this subject.
Okay, we are preparing ourselves for that.
Absolutely, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to be much better approach and much easier approach for you guys in relation to applying the concepts of project management, especially applying things such as a network diagram, because there is a network diagram, for example, whether you're going to go and draw it on a Word document or something becomes very, very hard for you guys to go and do. It's much more easier for you guys to actually put it on a pen and a paper. Does that make sense?
We can do this thing online while drawing the diagram on a paper and uploading the picture.
Trust me, yeah, that's a concept that I actually did suggest. But as I said, there's also other things involved, such as the ACS accreditation requirements. So it's not simply about whether we can run it online or not. There's also other regulatory requirements, because obviously degrees needs to become accredited by the Australian Computer Society, which means your degree becomes much more valuable. And they have also part of the requirements in relation to some sort of exams and how to conduct them. So it's not simply about the actual coronavirus. It's also about the other aspects that are related.
Yeah, sure. So thank you.
That's okay, mate. No problem at all. Any other questions, guys?
Sir, I want to ask relating about the assignment.
Tell me,
sir,
my friend.
As you told about the Slack and Trello, so do we only need to include Slack pictures in individual or both in individual?
In the individual part, nothing gets included. In the individual part, you're only commenting on the aspects that are actually mentioned in your marking section. There's also the marking, there's criteria that I'm going to be marking you on in relation to your individual contribution. Everything else gets incorporated in the actual assessment. So the Trello, the Slack, all of these pictures that I'll go and also use to evaluate your work will have to be incorporated into the main assignment that you guys go and submit.
So there is no need to paste any pictures in individual assignment, right?
No, not in your individual evaluation. 250 to 500 words maximum, and you need to actually talk about the criteria that we've mentioned. I recommend put a table with the criteria, and next to each criteria, write what you have done so that we can evaluate it very easily. That's what I recommend. It's very simple, very easy, and very viewable.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Any other questions, my friend? Anyone else have any more questions?
Thank you, sir.
You are always very, very, very welcome. All right, guys. Now, guys, please review the lecture slides, tutorial materials, and the notes you've taken. Read chapters 5 and 6 and continue working on your group assignment. I'll give you very much a good opportunity to go and talk and discuss your assignment very, very shortly. So what I would say for now, guys, thank you very kindly for all your time and all your effort. I will see you very shortly in your tutorial.